Hi everyone. So welcome back to the audit lesson today. And we will be understanding today audit documentation, like how the auditor documents the audit procedures that they have performed for the entity that they are auditing. So to begin with the audit plan, auditor should include the audit documentation in the following ways. The first is the overall audit strategy. It is a record of the key decisions considered necessary to properly plan the audit and communicate significant issues identified during the audit. After that comes the audit plan, which is also known as the audit program. So in the plan, step by step list of the audit procedures are done to achieve the audit objectives. This includes a record of risk assessment procedures, further audit procedures that needs to be performed, such as test of the controls and substantive procedures. Also, other audit procedures that have been done for the audit during the audit is documented. This audit plan serves as a record of the proper planning of the audit procedures that can be reviewed and approved prior to their performance. Also, auditor may use the standard audit program or audit completion checklist tailored as needed to reflect the particular engagement circumstances. Any significant changes made during the audit to the overall audit strategy or the audit plan and the reasons for the changes includes resulting changes to the planned entity of audit procedures. This explains why the significant changes were made and why the overall strategy and audit plans were finally adopted for the audit. This also reflects the appropriate responses to the significant changes occurring during the audit. So here point to be noted is that planning is not a discrete phase of audit, but rather a continual and iterative process that often brings us shortly in connection with the completion of the previous audit and continues to the completion of the current engagement. So yes, so planning continues throughout the audit, like even during the completion for or the fieldwork phase, we review the works planned in the planning section and give them update, give assess them and revise them if required. So further moving forward, audit documentation, like work papers that we prepare are the record of the procedures performed, which are relevant audit evidence obtained and conclusions the auditor reached. These are also called as working papers or work papers. So the objective of preparing the documentation are evidence that audit was conducted as per the auditing standard, evidence of the bias of the auditor's opinion and conclusion, additional purpose which may include the enable the audit team to demonstrate that it was accountable for the work, assist in planning, performing and supervising the audit, and it may serve as the reference of the future audit, quality control reviews or the peer reviews. So these are the few of the objectives of documenting the audit. Of moving forward, discuss understanding the form, content, and extent of the audit documentation. So, it should be in the paper or electronic or any other media form. While it is not necessary to document every matter during the audit, oral explanation alone without work papers are inadequate to support the auditor's work or conclusion. Talking about the content and extent, the auditor should prepare the audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit to understand the nitty of the audit procedures performed. So auditor should record identifying characteristics of the specific items matters tested, such as inquiries made, inspection done of the journal entries, inspection of a systematic sample of the records, observation procedures recorded, inspections done. So these are the things that auditors should properly document in their audit documentation work papers. Also, who performed the audit work and the date such work was completed, who reviewed the work performed and the date and extent of such review. This should be also documented. Signed engagement letter, audit plan documentation are the examples of such further audit procedures. Result of the audit procedures and audit evidence obtained, such as confirmations, representations, letters, this should also be documented properly with proper references. Also, significant findings or issues, conclusion reached, and any significant judgments made. So, significant findings or issues include matters that involve significant accounting practices, indicate the significant risk, indicate the FS may be materially misstated, may require the auditor to revise the RMM assessment, may have caused the auditor significant difficulty, may result in the modified audit opinion. So these are the significant findings that should be properly documented. Also, for the significant findings or issues, audit also the document discussion with the management TCWG should be documented. If auditor identified information that is inconsistent with the auditor's final conclusion regarding the significant finding or issues, document how the auditor addressed the consistency should be documented, and engagement completion documentation. This include all the significant findings or issues that should be documented. So all these points that have been discussed should be properly documented so that no any future error is identified or notable error is noted. Moving forward, there are certain specific contents of the audit documentation, such as permanent files and current file. So, permanent file include documentation with continuing interest from the year to year. So, if you are auditor previous year of the organization also, so permanent files are that continues, like that doesn't keep changing year to year, and that are the permanent for the entity that we are auditing. Few of the examples are organizational documents, minutes of the TCWG shareholder meeting discussion, flowchart, contracts of the long-term liabilities, analysis of the equity accounts, depreciation schedules. So these are the permanent files which are documented during the initial phases of the audit of the same entity, and that is just roll forwarded or carry forwarded if no changes are made on those. And current files are the someone which keeps on changing year to year audit, and audit documentation includes our current year documents for those, such as audit plan, FS, and auditor's report, working trial balance, the adjusting journal entries, meet schedules, audit procedures, auditor analysis, worksheet and reconciliation, entities document, significant audit findings, issues. So these are the current files that needs to be documented depending on the current year audit that we are performing. Also, audit documentation is not limited to the documents prepared by the auditor, but maybe include other appropriate documents, including the entity documents also. So, any supporting documents provided by entity which are used as a part of our audit should also be used as audit documentation and properly documented. Audit documentation need not include superseded draft of the work papers or the financial statement. So any draft financial statement, any draft work papers that are not complete, that are not final, should not be documented. That should be only with us until it is completed and it is reviewed and it is the final version. Only the final version should be documented, and all the draft version should not be is not required to be documented. Also, certain matters like staff training, which are not engagement specific, may document centrally within the firm or as a audit documentation for the audit engagement. So now moving forward, what are the headings? What are the characteristics of the work paper? What a work paper includes, we will discuss. So there are headings, exceptions, conclusions, initial tick mark or symbols and legends in the work paper. So heading may include the name of the client, work paper title, audit year that we are auditing. Exceptions are it may be presented as a comment or tick mark legend to the entity to identify issues. Conclusion may be present as a closing comments. Initials of the audit engagement team members who prepared and reviewed the work paper. Tick mark or symbols are certain symbolic representation of the audit work done or the result of the same. And legends are the defines each tick mark should also be provided. Also, if there is departure from the gas, so in the certain circumstances, the auditor judges it necessary to depart from the relevant presumptively mandatory gas requirements. Auditor must document the justification for the departure and how alternative audit procedures performed when the circumstances were sufficient to achieve the intent of that requirement. So these should also be documented properly. So moving forward now, assembly and the retention of the final audit file. So audit documentation should be prepared on a timely basis. It enhances the audit quality and facilitates effective review evaluation of the work, audit work and the conclusion. Documentation prepared at the such time of work should be performed is likely to be more accurate than the documentation prepared at a much later time. Assembly of the audit documentation in an audit file should be completed not later than the 60 days of the following report release date as per SAS and 45 days as per the PCOB AS for the issuer audit. The auditor should document the report release date in the audit documentation. Administrative process that does not involve the performance of the new audit procedures or drawing the new conclusions. However, changes may be made during the audit documentation documentation during the final assembly process if the administrative in nature. Also, delete or discard the superstated documentation, sort, collate, or cross-reference the work papers, sign off on the completion checklist, document audit evidence, add information received. All this should be documented in the audit file. Also, PCOAB also requires the engagement completion documents that includes all the significant findings or issues which should be documented. If there are revisions to the audit documentation after the auditor reported, that is not allowed, except in the certain circumstances. So the exceptions are any administrative changes to the audit documentation during the final assembly processes need to clarify the existing audit to the documentation arising from the comments received during the monitoring inspection by the internal or external practices. Any rare circumstances in which the auditor performs new or additional audit procedures or draw new conclusion after the data for audit report. So few examples are if there are incomplete procedures or subsequent discovery of the facts. In those situations, revisions to the audit documentation can be done. Also, regarding the detention, after the documentation is completed, the auditor should not delete or discard all the documentation of any nature before the end of the specified retention period, which is at least 5 years from the report release date for the SAS and 7 years as per the PCOAB AS for the or issuers audit. Also, discussing the ownership and confidentiality. Audit documentation is the auditor's property yet confidential. Auditor may make copies of the audit documentation available to the entity at the auditor's discretion, provided this does not undermine the effectiveness and integrity of the audit. Auditor should maintain confidentiality of the audit documentation and client's information, and they cannot share with outsiders without the client's consent, except investigation is authorized by AICPA, review of the professional practice, inquiry by ACPA or subpoena or summons of the valid judicial authority. So these four are the exceptional circumstances where audit can share their audit documentation to the external party. Otherwise, it is not allowed to the auditors to share their documentation to the outsiders, to the third parties. So that was all about the audit documentation that we have discussed. I will see you in the next chapter. Let me know if you have any query in the comment section. Thank you and bye.